اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
كيف حالكم؟
الحمد
الحمد
لله.
لله. Every Sunday I'm gonna go slow, but I don't tell you. But this Sunday I'm going to tell you straight. I'm gonna go slow. You know, honesty is the best policy. Sorry?
We were told that you can. I'm not told how many ayahs. Like what I am.
No. That's wrong. I try to.
We used to. We used to.
To be honest, now that you're mentioning that, the challenge about Quran is that one needs to convey the intent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is really the definition of tafsir. And that is challenging. But if you think about that concept, so when we look at, we study Quran, right? But you can study Quran from a number of different perspectives. Okay? So now in terms of our class, when we reading Quran, that's the subject matter. But from which perspective? So in the mornings you have a period whereby you're reading the words of Allah, but with the intent of memorizing the words of Allah. That's memorization and retention. So, okay, that's one perspective. Then, and this is also somewhat lacking, or very much lacking in terms of our learning circles. Currently, when you study Quran is a written exam. It's not an oral exam. It's a literary exam. So in other words, if you memorize 5 Jews, at the end of the year, there's a written exam on what you've memorized, not an oral one. Why do they do that? That facilitates the study of Quran from a different perspective. And what perspective is that? How to record Quran. Because recording Quran is a science in and of itself. So in other words, if you come to the exams and you basically write the entire Fatiha correctly, but you don't have 7 verses, and in other words, you don't start and stop properly, or for example, you write ulaika without the wow. So the fact that it's not pronounced doesn't mean it's not written. So in other words, though you don't pronounce it, but if you leave out the wow, it means that you've taken away from Quran, and therefore what you're writing and what is in Quran is 2 different things. So that's the other aspect. So we neither here for the first aspect nor the second aspect, but what you are highlighting is we're here for the third aspect. And what is that? When you study Quran from the perspective on unearthing the intent of Allah. So in other words, like they say, when you pray, you're in an interlocution, but you speaking to Allah. But when you want, Allah to be speaking to you in terms of that type of interlocution from top down, and then you must basically read Quran because Allah is now talking to you. So when Allah is talking to you, the idea is not what do I understand from Quran. Because, and this is a challenge for us, because many of us, in terms of our lives, we are preoccupied with what they refer to in common terms, conventional terms, my storyline. My storyline. Ana. No. When we read in Quran, we don't want to unearth what I can understand from Quran, but really what Allah intended by the revelation of Quran. That's unique. So it's not my storyline, it's Allah's storyline. And that it's a challenging phenomenon, because what is happening now, a person who endeavors to teach Quran, he's now placing himself on a particular platform. And what is that platform? He's serving now as an intermediary between the creation of Allah and Allah. And that can be overwhelming. So people normally, and since we're gonna go slow. So people sermonizers, Islamic speakers, and it's but you've been doing it for so long. It's like normal. It never ever becomes normal because just because of the enormity of the platform, that intermediate sort of platform that one preoccupies between Allah and His creation. It's and therefore even like a simple question many times. And Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, he has a book about Islamic legal theory. And the name of the book is, I speak under correction, Tawqi' al-Muwaqqi'in. Now, muwaqqi' means to sign. So, an Islamic legal theorist, an Islamic jurist, you ask him a question, give him an answer. What is he saying? He's saying, look here, you're not asking me because you want, my opinion. You're asking me because I'm a representative of the law of Allah. So you want to know what the law of Allah is. So when I give you the rule, it's like I'm signing it off. Now to sign something off is, you can be signing your life away. You follow me? So that's where the trepidation comes in, and sometimes the enormity of particularly in Quran. And we find a bound in terms of Quran translations. Not translations, but attended class we were making translation of the Quran. I find it very problematic that and I do understand that Quran, there are different types of verses. So like you have verses relating to rules and regulations. You have verses which are very simple and very straightforward. For example, verses are very simple, very straightforward. You and I, we can read, understand, and explain. We can read, we can unearth the meaning of the verse through an English translation. No problem, you unearth the meaning, fine. But then there are certain verses which require, a certain degree of expertise in order to understand what was the intent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm just saying that let's look at Quran just like broadly, like you and I, we translating Quran. Do each and every one of us actually have the qualification to translate Quran? And I think we sort of use the term translate almost like doing nothing else but translating. There's no way you can water down translating. At the end of the day, you're still concerning yourself with conveying the intent of Allah, whether it's through a translation or whatever else the case may be. It's a very profound thing. It's a very serious thing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So many times at the beginning of the class, those few minutes, few moments spent, it's mainly that worry. The meaning of the ayah, is it coming across properly? And then what we find lacking in many of our translations of Quran is that the translation is always very clinical. You with me? It's very clinical. It's very cut and dry. It can even be like academically on point, but it's very cut and dry. In other words, void of the emotion. Now the Quran, in terms of the language, the rhetoric, it's very loaded, and that appeal to the intellect and the emotion, if it's there, it's going to result in you doing certain things. But if in a class where only the breakdown of the words are given to you, but the essence is not being transmitted, which the words actually represent, and then we're also losing out on something. Are you with me? It's almost like some saying, I don't want to get involved in this now, please. You can also switch the video off also in this opportunity. Some say, I'm not saying it for myself. I'm not saying it for myself. I'm not saying it for myself. I'm Muhammad Carr. I'm not saying this as my own opinion. Right? I'm just saying some people are saying. And apparently it's been responded to. That the reason why the All Blacks lost was because they took clinical team and they lacked the passion and the emotion that the England team brought to the day. You follow me? That's what they say. So I only use that example to say that people make the difference. The passion and the emotion, if you go on that cold that it was that. Because apparently the management of the All Black team, they say it's not that. How can you say we come into a semi-final without any passion and emotion? Right? But let's say the passion and emotion was more and it caused him to win the semi-final. What's going to cause you, my point is, what's going to cause you to win Quran is not just the translation and even knowing the words, man. It is getting the feeling from Quran. And that feeling is like an energy which really drives you. And sometimes you might get that, but you don't really get, exactly, the sarf and the nahu and everything else, but you get the meaning. And then, that's the value, wallahu a'lam. So importantly, perhaps as an introduction now to our class, about Quran, and we are blessed, alhamdulillah, that the Quran is a great responsibility. May Allah grant us the understanding. Now, so for example, we were speaking now about the munafiqun, and we were speaking about certain hypocritical qualities. So the quality which was mentioned when we met the last time was a few qualities. One is that they don't spend except under duress. Now, and they don't come to prayer. They don't come to prayer except lazily. So this not for us to point a finger at anybody, but if you find within yourself that I'm only praying like lazily, I have to basically drag my feet to the prayer, we need to improve on that, because this is a relationship between you and Allah, between the lover and the beloved. And if a lover truly loves his beloved, he's going to look forward to spending time with his beloved. At the same time, also don't cut yourself off completely, because many of us are there that we will be dragged in chains, not to the fire of hell, but to paradise. That it's difficult, it's a struggle, but ultimately you get yourself to do it, and that's important. Because you're doing it, and inshallah, you're doing what you are able to do. That feeling and everything that goes with it, it's something which Allah endows you with. So Allah is telling you, employ the means, I will see to the result. So the means of getting close to Allah is following His commandments. So no matter how you're doing that, do it, maintain consistency in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring about the feeling. That's a unique thing between the outward adherence to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the inward feeling. They both feed off each other. That's basically that. So that's what we discussed last week. Another point which we also discussed was, of the hypocrites, many of them thought that looking for the Tabuk expedition, we're just going to throw money at it. I'm using our own conventional terms. And many, a sponsor and a donor has told me this, and they feel bad about it. My only response to the different challenges out there is to throw money at the different problems. The hypocrites, they thought that throwing money at the problems, our Muslim brothers are not like that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is just throwing money to a problem is not solving the problem. We have to invest more of ourselves in terms of a problem that we may have, not just throwing money to a problem, and Allah knows best. So those are the two things. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about another thing. What happens is, and I think it's relevant to us also in this time, Allah says, how do you say? Okay, somebody's phone ringing? I don't mind if your phone rings. But I just want to, when somebody's phone rings, I say it's a good opportunity to educate ourselves about the phone ringing. And not in a class only, genuinely, I love you, and if I knew who you were, I'll kiss you on your forehead. For affording us the opportunity to talk a little bit about phones. What happened was that the guy was making salah, right? So now his phone is ringing. So what happens is, I'm telling you this with certainty, absolutely, his phone is not disturbing him, but it's disturbing everybody in the masjid. And I think it's because of the goodness of this person. He feels that when he's praying, that nothing should distract him. So it's an act of piety for him to try his very best to ignore his ringing phone till the better end. Genuinely, and that's that's the only plausible explanation I could come to. So now, are we dealing with a good guy or bad guy? Not a good guy, very good guy. I mean, his level or her level and our levels are two different levels altogether. Let us understand that from the outset. But now what happens is, what is the fiqh of it? Your phone rings. So now what happens is, if you're in salah if you're in Salah, with minimum movement, you can access your phone. Even look at the phone and switch it off. Right? So let's say you pick out your phone and you even see the name. That doesn't invalidate your Salah. You see the name. You're cognizant of who's calling you. Right? You with me? As long as you don't audibly read what's on the screen, your Salah is still intact. So you take out your phone with minimal movement. Should you even see who's calling you, no problem. You put it on silent and you put it back into your pocket. That minimal movement does not invalidate your prayer. Everybody with me? So you can switch your phone off. Let's say that you can't access your phone except with excessive movement. Excessive movement, what does it do to your prayer? Invalidates your prayer. So now you need to do a cost-benefit analysis. Either my prayer or everybody's prayer. So when it's the interest of the group or the interest of the individual, who do you give preference to? The group. So what do? You break your prayer. You take out your phone. You switch it off. You lose the unit of prayer that you're in. Good and well, Allah will reward you. So now it's your piety balanced with knowledge. And then you become on the Mizan level. You get levels, you know what I'm saying? You follow? وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. On every level is another level. You follow? It's very important. And when somebody that don't, we quickly, the person, I genuinely feel that the person is not that he's not listening, hearing his song, he knows it and he's setting himself up. Like, jihad. And genuinely, and Allah may reward the person, but the problem is that our action must be influenced by knowledge. And it's a good example because the guy he thinks he's doing a good thing, but the knowledge aspect of it. So very important, when our phones ring, no problem. All of us make mistakes. Take out the phone and you silent, whatever the case may be. And Allah knows best. Okay. So now the first word here, we looked at those qualities, now we're looking at another quality. Allah talks about i'jab. The next ayah, how does the ayah go? فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ. In ayah number 55. I hope I'm right there. Yes. 55. فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ. So now the word, the first word there is fala. So now we know there's a continuity from the first verses. Because Allah is talking about now, Allah is talking about the hypocrites. Right? So now what does Allah want to say? La tu'jibka. The la here is what we refer to as la nahiya. It's a prohibition. But the word I want to actually focus on here is a'jaba yu'jibu i'jab. Now when we translate the word i'jab, I think the English translation here is fairly on point. It says la tu'jibka. I don't know what your English translation reads like, but my understanding would be to impress you. So if the word is impress, it's going to be on point. So should not impress you. So the kaf there, the kaf, which is attached to the verb. If it's attached to the verb, it automatically becomes the danapon. So maf'ul bihi, la tu'jibka, should not impress you. Okay? Now just, Quran, we take this word, being impressed. And we want to understand this phenomenon of being impressed. Because impressed is, if you look at it, impressed is actually, I could be impressed with your results. It's a positive thing. But the impression here is not necessarily a positive thing, because we're talking about it in relation to hypocrites. So impression of something which is good, but in reality is not actually good. So we go to another verse in Quran just to get the understanding of where Allah says, where He prohibits you from being impressed. So Allah talks about وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ. So our scholars say, even if impresses you, kathara, the amount of what khabith, of that which is vile. So sometimes you look at something that in essence, that thing is, it's vile, but it appears to be good. So then, if you're impressed by something which is intrinsically bad and outwardly good, Allah says, don't be impressed by that. Now, that is for me, when we try to read Quran, Like for me now, okay, I can really, we can close the Quran now and we can move on. Just that. And what did we do? We looked at the word ajab and we tried to understand it properly. We looked at another verse of the Quran that talks about it and we come to a meaning. And that meaning, I mean, if I ask you now to give me examples of whereby you impressed by someone who is outwardly good but intrinsically bad, you're going to give me 100,000 examples. It's a life principle. What do we say in English? Not all that glitters is. And is this a let's look at those of us who have children. Look at our children. What all that glitters, they think it's gold, but it's not. You have to tell them, look here, all that glitters is not gold. The younger we are, sometimes the more impressionable we are. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a lesson in terms of not being unduly impressionable. Easily impressionable is don't be impressed by the wrong things. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to talk about what should you not be impressed by. So just the Arabic talk about i'jab if you wanted to. I'll give you another Arabic word. It talks about istihsan. You know what istihsan means? Husn. To consider something to be good. But not only that, wastighrab. But you're amazed by it. And that's where the word, you're only impressed by something when you like it and you're amazed by it. That's to be impressed. You with me? And again, in terms of i'jab, it's a very relative thing. From where you're standing, it looks all good. I don't know if you see nowadays, they got this new, I don't know if it's a new genre of art. They're taking, the nice thing about it is the recycling aspect. They're taking out the recycling thing. If you look at it from far, it's an optical illusion. It looks like an art. But if you come near, it's rubbish. I'm using the words not because to shock you. Sometimes teachers do that, the shock effect. You say rubbish. Look, I'm not using it as a shock effect. I'm using the word rubbish because that's what it is. It's rubbish that they've put together, creating optical illusion. But from far off, you're very impressed with it. So that's what Allah talks about in the verse, وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيرِ. So now what does Allah talk about over here? Before the wish comes by the threshold of the door, I just want to tell you that it refers to أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أُولَادُهُم. That do not be impressed by what? Amwalu, their wealth. Amwal, plural of the word mal. So if you understand the word i'jab, you now know that, look here, like for example, what do we think? Many of us, unfortunately, we think this, which is problematic. Amwal is wealth, right? So this person earns so much of money. You're impressed by it because you understand that wealth actually means happiness. It doesn't. A lot of us are old and grey now. Cheer men with cheer women also. And now all of us understand the fact that and this is one of the follies of today's time, the deception. You are made to believe that your education. Now your education plays a role in terms of your income. So get the best education, no problem. But we are told that your education and consequent to that, your income leads to happiness. It doesn't. From an Islamic perspective, we say that your pursuit of happiness is another pursuit. Your pursuit of felicity lies elsewhere. You must get a good income. And yes, it's somewhat tied into one another. Because to be a pauper and happy, it's a bit difficult. Therefore, we seek refuge in being paupers and poverty-stricken. Right? But we put everything into context. That good education with a consequent good income, those two things are not going to guarantee you felicity. And don't be impressed on that particular. Use education as a utility. Good education, good job, mashallah. But don't run away with the idea that climbing up the corporate ladder or getting a better is going to. You're looking for happiness in the wrong place. You with me? So therefore, now the believers are now. Everybody wants felicity. You want to be successful. So now you're looking at the hypocrites. What happens? The hypocrites are living it up, so to say. Let not the wealth, which is the form of wealth, or their family impress you. So Don't give you homework, but you can just do till the last part. And I'll explain to you what Allah SWT is saying there. And what for the homework, what you must do is you must be able to reconcile. What is Allah saying? And this is unique. Allah tells you first thing, don't be impressed by their wealth and their children. Then Allah tells you, you know what, I'm going to do this consciously now. I'm moving this out of the way. The grass must always looks green on the other side, isn't it? Now Allah is actually taking you by your hand and taking you to the other side. Now let me show you what you're impressed by. Number one, if a person is given wealth, now what is wealth a means of? Wealth is a means of subsistence on a very basic level. Then also it's a means of luxury and opulence and further blessings. But if you're blessed with wealth, and many people are blessed with wealth like that, but the person, he has access to the wealth, but he doesn't use the wealth in a way that will improve his standard of living. Why? Because he's beset with miserliness. Now tell me, that psychological space to find yourself in while you have abundance of wealth, then you earn much less than that, and enjoying what you have, then you're much better off. So you see, and it's like, it's what do they call it? It's like the opposite. It's what do you call it? It's like contradictory, not contradictory, ironical. That thing which is a means of good is actually a means of bad for you. Why? Because internally you are a miser. So what wealth is that benefit? So you with me? Allah save us from that. I heard a story, I don't know how it's an anecdotal, I don't know how true it is, but the lesson there, what is the lesson? The lesson says that there was a beggar apparently in India, begging on the streets, and when he passed away, they found like 1 million rupees, under his bed. Now, being beset by miserliness. You with who? First point. So now you agree that's a bad thing. But now, Allah is talking about munafiqun. And the munafiq who's basically, you can't say he's a kafir. We're not going to label anybody with nifaq or kufr, but Allah is talking about munafiqun who are basically worse than kuffar. And then Allah says they are given wealth, but they're unable to benefit from the wealth. Why? Because they're miserly. This quality of miserliness, where does it come from? You with me? So here, Ibn Ashuri mentions, he talks about primarily what are they? Mu'min or kafir? Kafir. Now being a kafir in terms of your state of belief, what happens there? That's a bad thing, isn't it? Now that bad source, it leads to all bad qualities coming along. So you disbelief in Allah. Now what happens? Built on that disbelief in Allah, you have a whole lot of other bad qualities being built on there. Okay? Now what happens if you're a believer? A believer by his very nature, if Allah blesses him with wealth, he's going to use his wealth, isn't it? And he's going to spend of his wealth. Now even if a believer, if he spends of his wealth, and it's very difficult for him, like they say, aina, he gives it. But he's even better. Why? Because to give money, is it easy or difficult? It's difficult. So when a believer spends, what does he tell himself? What do you tell yourself? Allah's going to give you more, isn't it? If you didn't believe in the fact that Allah's going to give you more, you wouldn't have spent it. That's our nature. My point being that if you have Iman and built on your Iman, you become generous by the dictates of your Iman. And then if you are disbeliever normally, then what happens is, based on your disbelief, you have certain qualities. And if you understand this, the thought that came to my mind was, in today's time we have a very complex mu'min, like you and I, we're very complex. Why? Because we say the person is a mu'min, but see how he behaves. That was contradictory, because if you were a true mu'min, then following up on your iman would be good qualities. Even though it's like against your own nafs, but you would, like miserliness, but you would still tell yourself, look here, I have to spend, because if I don't spend, then I'm not going to get more, so you spend. You follow me? So in our current, it's a very difficult thing to mention, that this guy is a mu'min, but see how he behaves. Whereas, if we are mu'min, true mu'min, then what should happen is that the qualities built up from there should be good and solid. Wallahu alam. So that's the tafsir of the other part of the verse that goes to the end of 55. So when we meet again, inshallah, we'll start on verse number 56. Jazakumullahu khairan. Dat was het zo. And you know, and also I see ghost. What do you think that a go slow Sunday means? If I must do all of it, I don't have to do all. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.